Freedom Radio Hour. Live on Capital Radio 91.6 FM.
All right, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Freedom Radio Hour. I'm your host, DJ Adam Cruz, and I have my fantastic co-host here,
Eddie Nicholas. What up, beautiful people? Welcome to 91.6 FM, the heartbeat of Sedan. We are so glad that you chose to join us today. Adam, let's get right on to it. What are we going to be talking about today?
Oh my gosh, we're talking about Berkeley Music, College of Music, and MIT coming together to figure out this whole royalty game. We're going to be talking about the IMS Ibiza 2016 great streaming debate that they just had recently. And we're going to talk about Amazon and the fact that they're about to launch their music streaming service.
Oh, wow.
So first up out of the gate, let's let our listeners and our viewers know that the Freedom Radio Hour is here, not only giving you fantastic music tonight, but we're here to be your number one source for music, business news, and trends from around the globe. Thank you so much for joining us today and always. All right, so first out the gate, let's talk about the IMS Ibiza 2016 because I am very pumped.
Now, what do the letters IMS stand for?
Okay, so this is supposed to be the International Music Summit. Okay. This year it was in Ibiza. I don't know if it's there every year. To be honest with you, I'm not super well versed on the summit itself. But they, like they've done previously, have published a live video from a particular panel discussion entitled "The Great Streaming Debate." Now, those that are just tuning in for the first time, if you're a DJ, a producer, a songwriter, an artist, a spoken word artist, or even just a music enthusiast, what we're trying to do here at the Freedom Radio Hour is to let you know all you need to know regarding copyright, royalties, the changes in streaming media, the changes regarding the Copyright Act that's called the DMCA, Digital Millennium Copyright Act, and so on and so forth. So we talk legislation here, we talk trends, we talk news. So the very interesting thing is there's always, at least since the inception, this growing trend to have a bit of a streaming war. And that is that because, as you know, Spotify, Apple Music, Tidal, and all of them, they want your money, but they don't want it once, they want it every month. Okay, and we talk about variations of that because everybody's kind of looking at it the same and slightly different ways. So tonight, let's bring up this IMS talk. So it was, let me break down who it was.
The names, good to know names.
Yeah. So it's called the Great Streaming Debate. It happened earlier in June. It was, the panelists included Brian Tappert, who's the co-founder of TrackSource. Here at the Freedom Radio Hour, we love house music, but we like it more soulful, perhaps a little slower in tempo, more vocals oriented, for example. And TrackSource is that kind of website where you could download material. They don't stream at the moment, but you can download material from that website for a long time. So Brian Tappert was in the house. Jamie Chamblers, he's the director of Anglo Digital Management. Another gentleman, Josh Carr-Hilton, he's the founder of The District out of Canada. Matthew Adele, the CEO of Metapop. He also happens to be the former CEO of Beatport. So put that in your bonnet. You also had Stephen White, CEO of Dubstep Media Holdings. Andy Dean, head of Artist and Industry Liaison, CrowdMix. And it was moderated by a gentleman by the name of Mark Lawrence. He's a CEO of AFEM, Association for Electronic Music in the UK.
That panel sounds mighty beige to me.
It does. And it was. It was.
You know, that's my little cute way of saying, yeah, that panel's kind of beige, but let's go on.
Okay, so this. I love it. So this happened earlier in June, and they had what they coined the Great Streaming Debate. So there's a few things in this 45-minute discussion that stuck out to me. The first thing was they didn't seem, not one of them has a plan to make money, real money, from streaming. Let me say that again. Not one of these fancy schmancy panelists and the organizations and companies that they represent is admitting to having any real plan for streaming music. Okay. In previous episodes here, we talked about the crazy situation, the tumultuous relationship that Beatport has had with the game. In particular, in short, Beatport is in the process of trying to file bankruptcy. They're trying to figure out what they're going to do with themselves. They've shut their doors to a certain degree, have stripped down their services. They used to offer a lot. Now they're basically back to just a download music site. Beatport historically was the biggest dance music download site, main competitor
covering
in
a whole bunch of different genres.
Yeah, they were more EDM, electronic dance music, whereas TrackSource, the competitor, was more soulful house, like the stuff we like. Either way, what we notice now is that you have the former CEO of Beatport at this talk, and you had Brian Tapper, the co-founder of Traxsource, at this talk. You also had a woman, I don't know if they have her listed here. She was from Deezer. I don't think she quite made this published list here.
But isn't Deezer bigger than all of them?
Yes, if you recall, Deezer overseas is supposed to be one of the biggest DSPs, digital service providers.
Her name be a see.
I know, and furthermore, Deezer was preparing itself to become a publicly traded company. An IPO, and that evidently didn't work out well after those reports came out that there was no net growth in the industry. Just a quick summary of that. There were economists that came out at the top of the year to say, look, we've done at exhaustion a study of the trends in music, and while we don't see that the music industry is losing money, it's not making money. So the net growth is zero. So this is bad for investors because they generally want to invest in growth companies, whereas music as a global market is looked at as a zero net growth industry. So that's bad. So after that, it was no surprise that you had a Deezer that sort of collapsed their plans or jumped ship, if you will, on any ideas of becoming publicly traded. So anyway, so this discussion, one of the biggest points that I noticed is that not one of them had a plan for what they're going to do to make money for streaming. Now, this is a big problem because you have the Spotify's, Apple Music, titles of the world that are taking hand over fist the money regarding streaming. How? Because they're tying it in with the advertising. They're tying it in with subscriptions. Whereas Traxsource has no plan, for example, to become a streaming service at the moment. Now, will that change? Perhaps. The trends are very clear, and the global market digital downloads have been dropping to the tune of 30%. By 2019, we're looking at 40+%.
But didn't in one of our discussions, didn't you say, however, with Traxsource, they said they have seen a 25% increase?
Well, that was correct? The thing about this summit. Brian Tapper, who's one of the co-founders, instead of saying, yes, we have to come up with a compelling plan for what we're going to do regarding streaming media. Are we going to include it in our platform? Are we completely turning our back on it? He says, I think that the idea that the digital download is dying has been grossly over-exaggerated. He says, in fact, Traxsource has enjoyed a 25% increase for fiscal year 2015-16 in the first quarter.
Well, I think that may have a lot to do with, because with streaming, you get to go into the site for the stream and all of that type of stuff. But with what you're saying in regards to like Traxsource, it sounds more so like this is something people can purchase to own, to have on their flag, like we collected CDs and records.
Exactly. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about more of this summit talk, as well as what's happening with the Berklee College of Music and MIT right here. Where?
Woo! 91.6 FM, the heartbeat of Sedan. I had to catch my breath.
Freedom Radio Hour, y'all.
Freedom Radio Hour. Live on Capital Radio 91.6 FM.
What up, beautiful people, and welcome back to 91.6 FM, the heartbeat of Sedan, Freedom Radio. We're so glad you came back to join us. I'm Eddie Nicholas, and I'm here with my fantastic host, Mr.
Adam Cruz, and we're live and direct right here on the Freedom Radio Hour with your number one source for music business news and trends from around the globe. Last we were talking about the IMS, short for International Music Summit. There was a huge panel discussion that they coined the Great Streaming Debate. It happened in Ibiza earlier in June. And basically, what we have been talking about here is the fact that they seem to, all these companies, including Deezer, Traxsource, the former CEO of Beatport, and so on, don't seem to have a real plan for what they're going to do to make a legitimate business. Yes, or have a viable business regarding streaming income. Traxsource, Brian Tapper's the co-founder there, has talked about how Traxsource has enjoyed a 25% increase in download sales from last year and this year. So he's quite pleased and has rejected any arguments that the digital download is dying out. The thing about that is, my problem is, Traxsource, perhaps not Brian, because we don't want to single out one person here, but Traxsource perhaps is being a bit short-sighted here, because while he might be touting a 25% increase at the Traxsource site, the global market that we've talked about is dropping in terms of the digital download by the tune of 30%. That's not a farce, that's reality. And so what that's telling me is that there's this growing divide between the general consumer, the person that by and large would sign up with like a Spotify, iTunes, like the general listener, versus the niche market listener, which is in the TrackSource case by and large are DJs. So,
which is a niche market.
Yes. So what I'm saying is that I think the niche market might be getting nichier, and that is spelling and it might be spelling trouble for TrackSource in my opinion, because I feel like we haven't stopped giving the keys to the castle of our industry to tech companies. We gave it to them, not in the literal sense, figuratively gave the keys to them when they were out trying to sell their iPods and iPhones, and they needed to fill it with stuff. So they were interested in music insofar as it helped them to sell their devices and their products.
But they're only interested in it as far as a library for people to come and purchase from.
Right. But the thing about that is that it's not really taken into account the sort of global citizenry that is digital music consumption, because look at TrackSource. TrackSource, for example, because they're mostly DJs or DJ-friendly kind of consumers, they need to be able to search in a bunch of different ways, not just a general way. If you go on iTunes, you're generally searching by, say, artist, producer maybe, or the name of a song, whereas on TrackSource, you can search a lot more deeply for what you need.
Search by label, by artist name.
And that's important. So the moderator, Matthew Lawrence, was, I think that's his name, Mr. Lawrence was talking about, hey, Deezer, in the advent of you guys trying to continue on past this IPO demise. Remember, I'm telling you, they were trying to go public and they stopped that plan. He's saying, now in the future, I wonder what you guys are going to do to entice more dance music fans. In particular, I noticed that on Deezer, the moderator said, doesn't have the search capabilities to search by label, like Eddie said. So the one of the heavy hitters at Deezer, a woman, I forget her name, she says, "Oh, that's a great idea. I'll go and bring that back. I'll bring that back to my team, and we might be able to add that functionality as early as Monday." And that I was gagging because
they should have already had it.
Exactly. And it seems like there's always seem to be missing a piece of the puzzle to get into a whole other genre of music. So Deezer had no plan to add, make the experience more friendly towards DJs, because they're targeting the general consumer. You know. So it's funny that out of this panel discussion, they're able to make these little innovations, but it's very telling to me how out of touch companies like Deezer and the like are when you consider niche market music, not just dance music. I'm thinking about what if you're really into the metal scene, or what if you're really into the folk scene. We're all essentially being treated the same way, which is under. We're not treating with as much respect or as much consideration. Let's take one more break, but when we come back, you made a great point before about how we need to be better lobbyists. We have to be right at the table during these times. There was a few things that we should talk about when we bring up this next story regarding the Berkeley School of Music and what they're trying to do. Let's take a quick break. We'll be right back. Where?
91.6 FM, the heartbeat of Sedan.
Freedom Radio Hour.
Freedom Radio Hour.
And we're back live on Capital Radio 91.6 FM, the heartbeat of Sudan. You're deep in the zone right here at the Freedom Radio Hour. We're your number one source for music, business, news, and trends from around the globe. I'm your host, DJ Adam Cruz, and my co-host here,
Eddie Nicholas. What up, beautiful people, and welcome back to 91.6 FM, Freedom Radio Hour, the heartbeat of Sedan. Adam, when we left, you were getting ready to talk about Berkeley.
Yeah, let me tell you what's going on. So, for the longest time, we're trying to figure out how to get our royalties. The short of a long story is there seems to be this problem where from the streaming site or from the download site, when a person pays for something, that money it's supposed to be sent to the publishers or songwriters, whoever gets their share of the money. But it's somehow, when it's disseminated out, there's some watering down that occurs. Somebody's stepping in where the money is not going where it needs to in the end.
And see, and the crazy thing about all of that is computers doing all of this.
It really is. Well, let me break down some things so you should understand. So the first thing is, so for a long time, we haven't had the strongest outfits coming together to really deal with this. But I argue maybe we have now. So the Berklee College of Music and MIT, these are the biggest technical universities and colleges out there. They're sort of the nerds, if you will, and we need nerds right now to figure this out. So they have banded together, and they have gotten other big companies, and I'm talking about big companies. Ready for this list? These are the people that are collaborating now with Berklee and with MIT. We're talking about big names like Spotify, Pandora, YouTube, Netflix, SoundCloud, NPR, as well as major labels such as Sony, Universal, and Warner. what they're trying to do is finally get to the table and work with our tech geeks, if you will, and figure out the real problems around money. And they talking what they have discovered so far is what we've been discussing here for a while, which is there is a major lack of transparency. They feel like the internet led to an explosion of innovation precisely because of its open architecture. So they argue that something that's open should be invented so that everybody could get in and use it. So what they're developing now is an open source database for ownership rights. So it's finally a way, and this is now the trend. Check this out. So in these past episodes, this is what we're talking about. Because our own people haven't gotten their act together to be able to streamline the way that royalties are paid out to artists when you at the point of purchase, after a while, somebody's is bound to jump forward to do something. Now, perhaps we have technology companies that could finally solve these algorithms and these problems, you know? But I find it fascinating that we've been at this for more than 10 years and we still haven't been able to figure it out. What Berkeley has been saying is, look, we're figuring out that over a decade of streaming, we still don't know where all the money goes all the time.
And people are still getting paid a half a penny.
That's right. And furthermore, they're saying that we've never seen an industry where a person pays and you don't know who to pay. They're saying they're using the analogy. It's like going to the store and going to buy the item. There's no one at the register.
And you know, and again, when we talk about all these supposedly millions and billions of dollars that YouTube and all these other sites are claiming that they paid it out to, who did you pay it to?
Exactly. So here's what's happening. I think finally we have the biggest players here, like I mentioned in my list. They're coming together. I think we might see the biggest heads of this get together and finally devise a plan to really deal with it. But I do feel like we might see the demise of, say, performance rights organizations or the like, not because we won't need them, but because there will be this ability to independently manage your performance rights within these dashboards as well, because we've covered before how there's been these little outfits, investors that are investing in companies that could finally track royalties because they know there's money in there. Because where do you think that lost, if they could recover that lost money, where do you think that'll go after administrative fees? So anyway, I think it's fascinating that they're coming together. They're meeting in New York in the coming weeks to really hash out the first few steps and how to get this together. But they seem very confident that they can develop a database.
Did I hear ASCAP and BMI sitting at that table?
Let me repeat the list. So far, they're only touting big names like Spotify. Nope. Spotify, Pandora, YouTube, Netflix, SoundCloud, NPR, Sony, Universal, and Warner for now.
And see, those, again, when we talk about being at the table, those people represent those of us that are artists. None of their names are on that list.
Well, some of the other findings they found were fascinating, which speaks to your lobbying point from earlier. First thing is they're saying, look, we think that with a shared way of identifying ownership, some of the issues, like we're saying with the lack of transparency, will be improved. But furthermore, they're saying some of the issues are around these streaming services taking flight or launching without the input of other members of the community. So you're saying we need to be there at the table to lobby for what we want, right, as an industry. But they're saying that when it came down to, say, YouTube, for example, musicians were not invited to the front-end discussions of how the flow of money was going to be paid out.
You got to demand that you are at the table.
But what if you don't know that they're launching such a product until it's out?
Somebody got to leak. Somebody got to be a whistleblower, because this is crazy. You know, I'm getting agitated.
You should, because I'm agitated too.
Because when I hear stuff like this, decisions are being made about those of us that create art.
Right.
And we're not invited to the table to talk about what we would like.
Right.
And that's why I'm a little bit miffed by none of the people that represent me as a writer and as an artist are not sitting at that table negotiating first for more money. You need to get out of that penny. You need to talk about 50 cents to $1 or $2 or $3 to go into people's pockets.
Right.
You know, before all of this, there should still be some type of levy where the artist is getting the bulk of the money, because it's their product and their creativity that all this other stuff is being garnered from, and these other people are making millions.
Right. But let's
dollars.
also be clear too that you don't immediately see the ASCAP, BMI, and CSACs of the world because they are focused on performance royalties, whereas in this instance we're talking about mechanical royalties. But your broader point isn't lost on me, which is that why isn't that we're all not together, where there's in the same dashboard, in the same infrastructure, in the same experience, you can figure out your performance royalty, where that stuff is, and where your mechanical income is at. That's the download money. So you should be able all in one to have that in place. But you know what that's going to do? That'll eventually cause the demise of some of these companies. Now I'm not talking profit companies. I'm talking maybe that would change the landscape of PROs, performance rights org. So you may not see a CSAC, BMI, or ASCAP because you might be able to independently manage it on your own,
which you can do.
So I'm just saying that when we have to be careful what we're looking at, because the reason why these PROs came into existence was to help us not get our money taken from us from publishers and from labels. So this created a lane for us to get money directly to the artist. So I feel like maybe this is the wave of the future, that these dashboards will come out to have like an all-in-one experience. But we ought to be careful too, because we don't always know the implications. And if proof is in the pudding, our music industry doesn't have a clue in the following departments: adaptability and sustainability. We're doing awfully
and
in that.
Fair rates.
Yes, that's all the time we have for today. Definitely check out EddieNicholas.com, the brand new single One Time. Check out your boy DJ Adam Cruz. The Freedom LP is available everywhere. Yes, it's on Spotify and Tidal and all that. And of course, check out freedomradiohour.com. Leave a comment under everything that we're posting because we want to hear from you. All right, tune in next time because all of our episodes are around these topics. So thank you so much for tuning in. Have a great weekend and a great week ahead. We'll see you next time.
And not only that, Freedom Radio Hour, we send out mad love to Orlando, Florida, to Club Pulse. You know, many of our friends have performed at that club at one time or another. Our hearts go out to the 49 people lost. Peace and love.
Peace and love always.